Hi, everybody. Another edition of Tarter Sauce. I'm Steve Tarter here at the Peoria Journal-Star. And with me, Gene Olson, airports, plural, director. And we're talking about Peoria airports. And
that's correct.
I think most people will know and let you say it, the full name of the big airport.
Yeah, it's the General Wayne A. Downing Peoria International Airport.
See how lazy I am? I let the guests say it, and I should know that.
Yeah, and our street address is 6100 West Everett McKinley Dirksen Parkway. We like long names.
Do you get all that on a business card?
Yeah, it does. It fits right there.
There you go. And, of course, the small airport, Mount Holly Airport, for those that are familiar with Peoria. Well, Gene, first of all, thanks for coming on. And then you guys have just had a big month, February.
We did.
Which you have told me is traditionally a slower month. Cold, winter, it's post-holiday. But you had, what's the number, 49,000 passengers?
Yeah, we had over 49,000 passengers in February this year, which is the busiest February that we've ever had. It's just, we'd like to thank everybody for coming out and using the airport.
And this comes off, you've had some, you tell me, because I know we run the stories in our paper. I should probably remember them. But you're breaking records. I mean, in recent years.
We set a passenger record for 2018. And we also, I think 7 of the 12 months in 2018, we set monthly records.
Wow. So this is a kind of a trend for you guys. And you attribute that to what?
Well, we've had some successes with new markets that are not so new anymore, but we've added Charlotte, we've added Destin, Florida. That's a seasonal market. It'll come back, I think, in May, and so those are markets that we didn't have before. We did lose Detroit, which was kind of a bad thing for us, but we've seen Minneapolis. Detroit was Delta, so they also go to Atlanta and Minneapolis, and we've seen the traffic for both Atlanta and Minneapolis pick up. So I think that's maybe not a net loss.
Gene, how long have you been at the airport?
This summer will be 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
And in that time, would you say been a lot of change in your business? I mean, industries, certainly this one have been impacted greatly. What about the airline business?
It's definitely changed a lot. When I first got here, if you were flying around with airplanes at 65% full, we call it load factor. If you were flying around 65% full, you were doing okay. Now, if you're not over 80%, you're hurting, and you get nervous about any low or any route that is less than 80%.
And how do you categorize Peoria? Because obviously, you provide service certainly to Chicago and Minneapolis and Charlotte, the places you mentioned. But one of I guess the raps about and it's not a rap on Peoria per se, because we got a beautiful airport and we can talk about that. But the fact that it's a smaller city, you don't have the same frequency of service. Is that a problem? I mean, you're dealing with. Are you competing with like Quad Cities, Springfield, so forth, Bloomington?
Well, when I interview a prospective employee, and it doesn't matter if it's the director of finance or a shuttle bus driver, I point out to them that there's an airport 100 miles west of us. There's another airport about 50 miles east of us. There's one 60 miles south, and there's a huge pair of airports 160 miles north. Nobody has to fly out of Peoria. And so the only reason that somebody will fly out of Peoria is if we make them want to. And we do that by making it convenient and by making the customer service experience top notch. And then the reason they do fly out of Peoria is because we're connected. We connect not just to Chicago. Everybody is so focused on going to Chicago to change planes. We don't just connect to Chicago. We connect to 4 of the 5 most connected airports in the world. So
those are what?
Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, and Minneapolis, and then Charlotte is up there too. You can fly to Charlotte and connect all up and down the East Coast. You can connect to Minneapolis and go just about any place west that you want to go. Dallas is the same thing. It's a gateway to the south, the southeast, and to Latin America. And so is Atlanta. So we're very connected. I have a map, and I have a presentation I do for like service clubs, Rotaries, Kiwanis, those kinds of groups. And I have this map on there, and it shows all the places you can get to with one change of planes in the United States.
Oh.
Look, it's just a big red blob because you can get just about any place in the United States with one change of planes. I have the same map that shows all the places you can get to in the world with one change of planes, and it looks like this big red spider. You know, you can get tons of places with just one connection. If you go 2 connections, you can get almost the whole world. And then my joke is, if you have 3 connections, I'm not sure you want to go to that place. So
now you mentioned, pardon me, you mentioned the interviewing and shuttle drivers included, and I got to mention the shuttle drivers because that's a service. And let's talk about parking, because I think that's part of what you put out in your release about the record for February. You also mentioned you're nearing capacity at the airport. What does that mean?
So we have 3,339 parking spaces available at the airport. If you look at other airports our size, they'll have anywhere between 1/3 to 2/3 as many parking spaces, and they don't fill them. And that's because they charge.
Right.
So when something is free, people will use it, and we're happy to have that. So we're within a couple hundred spaces of being full. It's to the point where we count the seats that are coming in and out that day to make sure that we're going to have enough. We had, for example, and this will be kind of topical, we had a charter come back in, was a gambling junket charter, and it was a 737, and they had about 160 people that were coming back into Peoria and getting in their cars and going home. So that gave us probably 80 or 90 parking spots back.
Wow.
So we're counting it like that.
Wow. In and out. So people need to be aware, especially if they're not frequent flyers, that you allow a little time.
Right.
If you're going to park there, maybe some people get dropped off, and obviously that's a different deal. But if you're going to park your car there, give yourself a little more time, because if you're parking at one of the overflow lots or pretty far back, you can hop on that shuttle. And the shuttle driver,
right?
And you were telling me
the shuttle drivers will actually watch where people are going, and if somebody looks like they're doing laps trying to find a parking spot, the shuttle driver will actually go over there and stop them and say, "Hey, follow me. I'll take you to a parking spot."
You just don't get this service in your big city airports.
Oh, definitely
Follow
not.
me to the parking lot, free parking lot.
Right.
No, you just don't get that.
So they'll lead them to a space and then give them a ride into the building. So if we do run out, what we do is we do what we call our emergency parking procedure. So there are a couple of boulevards that kind of run up and down in the parking lot. We'll close one lane of those and let people park on it and turn it into a one-way street.
Okay.
And we've got a bunch of those. And then we have the old postal encoding center.
Right.
That's in the west parking lot. And we usually don't let people park behind that building, and we open that back up. And then there's little pieces of pavement kind of hidden here and there. We open all those up. So that's why the shuttle drivers, those guys
they know.
Yeah, and they do a great job. They're
well, you were telling me that, and I've relied on, at least on a number of occasions, them, you come rushing in, you park your car, you run into the airport, and now it's time to come back, and you kind of forgot where you parked.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one who's done that.
Oh, no, that happens all the time.
And they help.
Yeah, they'll take a passenger and run up and down the parking lot with your clicker, and you're hitting the clicker trying to make your car alarm go off or just see the flashing lights, and they do that all the time.
Oh.
The other thing they do is like somebody will drive up and drop their traveling companion and their bags, and they'll have the emergency flashers on. And then they forget that they have the emergency flashers on. They go park, and they come back a week later, and the battery's dead.
Right.
So our vehicles are equipped with the little charger packs, and we give jump starts all the time.
So did you have to do a lot in the cold winter?
Yes.
I imagine some of those cars probably went cold, just sitting out into 20 degree below zero.
One of our challenges in the wintertime is when it snows, like we had all this snow in January and February. Our parking lot is not like a shopping center where everybody goes home at night,
right,
and then they can clear the parking lot. We always have cars in our parking lot, and so when we have a big snow, a lot of times we'll plow people in because we can't help it.
Right.
But all of our vehicles that work in the parking lot, they all have a shovel, and so if somebody gets stuck that way, then we go and dig them out. So again, not something you're going to see at a big airport.
But the whole business of capacity, nearing capacity, and I think it says it in the release, that's a good problem to have. I mean, it's a sign that your airport's being used.
Yes, and that's an awesome thing that people are responding to the the offerings that are there and using the services, because if we don't use the services that we have, if we don't use the flights and the routes that we have, we're not going to get more.
Right.
And that's why Detroit went away, because people, those airplanes were flying around at about 60%. Delta let us know that was a problem. We started working on it, and we actually got the loads up to like 77%. But the rest of Detroit's service, their average was 80%.
So they had to
and this is where level. This is where you see the impact of the pilot shortage, because in the old days, before the pilot shortage became a severe issue, they would have let that route go, and they would have let it keep running. But now, when they have a limited number of pilots, they have to deploy them where they're going to make money, and they couldn't afford to leave them on the Detroit route.
How is it that we have a pilot shortage? Because one would think that's always like a prestige job. One of the cool things is this is your captain speaking. I mean, what kid doesn't want to follow in those footsteps?
Yeah.
Well, why is it? Why don't we have?
Well, the barrier to entry got increased, I'll say doubled. So Congress passed a law in response to a crash that said that you have to now be an airline transport pilot rated pilot to fly in the right seat of an airliner. Used to be that you could do that with you could be a first officer with just a commercial license. And so the airlines were typically hiring pilots around 750 hours of flight time. From what I understand, the real criterion was having 100 hours of multi-engine time and then getting through the interview process. Now, to be fair, well, let me finish that thought. So Congress made a law saying you got to be an ATP. So that means you got to have 1,500 hours of flight time. So they doubled the amount of flight time. When you come out of a university flight training program, you got maybe a few hundred hours. So how do you build those hours to get to where you can take the ATP test? You flight instruct. And that's basically the low entry level. It's the very difficult entry level work that it takes to build hours. And so people were looking at, the level of work that I have to do to get into the industry is so high, and the rewards to get there are so low. There was also salaries. I mean, as the availability of pilots has tightened up, salaries have gone up. So that's kind of helped. And the other thing is that the military is hanging on to their pilots more. Used to get some from the military. Yeah, it used to be in the 70s, you'd have 70 to 75% of the airline pilots came from the military. Now it's below 40%.
Really?
So general aviation is training 60% of our pilots. And flight instructors are harder to find. Flight instruction is much more expensive than it used to be. You come out of a college with a pro pilot degree and that kind of flight experience, you're looking at the same kind of college debt that doctors have to deal with.
Wow.
So it's all those factors kind of combined together.
Is there a move afoot to fix that? I mean, I don't know how you do it exactly, but I mean, loosening up, I guess we all want to we want to make sure there's a great experience factor there, but to expedite things a little bit?
Well, it's a political hot potato. There's a certain group of elected officials that how do you go and compete against your primary opponent, saying I want to loosen safety standards? It's just not going to happen.
Especially now. Right now.
What I would like to see them do is give more credit for the university training environment. They give some credit for that already, but I'd like to see them give more credit for that and reduce the number of hours required if you came out of a formal, university flight training program. There's really two ways to do flight training. You can go to Mount Holly and hire your instructor. That's a Part 61 school, and if you don't like your instructor, you fire them and you get another one. Or you can go through like a university program, which is called a Part 141 program, and you have to fit into the program. And if you don't fit into the program, you can't fire your flight instructor. They fire you. And it's much more structured and more organized, like the airline environment. So it makes sense to me to give more credit for that, because it's the quality of the training that counts, not the quantity. We have an old saying in aviation: do you have 500 hours of flight time, or do you have 1 hour 500 times? And the university flight training program, you have 500 at different hours.
Right. Yeah. So that makes sense. What feedback do you get? You've been at the airport now 10 years in Peoria. We've got a beautiful airport now. I mean, redone, and I know that's been a number of years, but I hear that all the time. If somebody comes in, hasn't seen it, hasn't been in town for a while, what feedback are you getting for about the whole experience of flying in or out of Peoria?
The positive feedback is the same things that you hear. People like the building, how it looks, that our custodians keep it extremely clean. We hear that a lot.
Right.
The negative side is sometimes comments about reliability. People are concerned that their flight gets canceled. Right. And that seems to be very Chicago focused. So that's why I tell people, if you don't like flying over Chicago, change planes somewhere else. Chicago is using a very high percentage of its capacity, so when a little thing happens there, it kind of ripples across the whole country. Right. We always hear feedback from people with their destination that they want to go to, and probably the two that we hear the most are Denver and Detroit, and we would like to see both of those come back as well. And we're working on both of those.
Direct flight from Peoria to Denver.
Right. Yeah, which we used to have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I remember that. And what was the airline that did that?
That was United.
United. Okay. This is total aside, but I have to share this. My family's in the East, so we go back periodically to the Boston area. But the last time we went, we were going to the Cape Cod, and we got Logan Airport in Boston, which is known for being in the middle of traffic and all this other stuff. It's very close to the city, and as you know, some of these airports are way the heck out. This one's close. But my wife made the arrangements. We wound up flying to Provincetown on the tip of the Cape in this little plane, and it was the greatest experience because we're the only two on the plane. This little guy, and you get to talk to your pilot, and here we go. And it was it lasted like 20 minutes. A trip that it usually takes, if you drive it, takes an hour and a half, or depending on traffic. 20 minutes and you fly right in, and it was like going back in time because you fly over the sand dunes and you land in this little airport where it was nobody. It was great. But you can enjoy experiences like that when you try some of these out-of-the-way airports that probably you're familiar with.
I'm familiar with the airline that you're talking about. I think it was most likely Cape Air. When I was at Evansville, Evansville and South Bend used to both have service to Indianapolis, and we both lost it about the same time, so we were trying to replace that. And we contracted, both airports joined together and contracted with Cape Air to run a little shuttle service that would hop from Evansville to Indianapolis to South Bend. They had two airplanes, so they were kind of crisscrossing like that.
Little planes.
Cessna, like four, I forget which model, but a 400 series Cessna, so it's a piston twin, has about 9 seats in it, plus the co-pilot seat. They would sell the co-pilot seat, and they were used
Give
to
you a
getting
thrill up there.
yeah. Well, I mean, I never got to because it was so popular that I was never able to sit in that seat.
Is it first come first served, or do you get to pick your seat?
I think it was first come first served. But so that airline, they were great to do business with. The experiment didn't really work that well, but that same airline is now flying what they call essential air service routes. So they're connecting like small communities in southern Illinois and Missouri to St. Louis.
Oh,
and that was it was one of those projects that didn't work, but everybody parted friends, and I would be happy to work with them again at some point in the future.
Well, we certainly, I mean, we took it there and coming back, and I have to tell you, that was a whole different way to hit the Cape. So
they made a TV show out of that airline.
Oh yeah,
it was called Wings.
Wings, absolutely.
And so when you meet the people from the company, they always want to know, okay, which one of you was the mechanic?
You know, I thought of Wings when we went there, because that was the other thing, and you know, you point out the importance of customer service to attract people to Peoria. I think it's the same is true when you've got a small little airplane. You rely on very much of personal. I mean, the person that brings your bags off the airport is the pilot, you know, or something like that. I mean, so it's a fascinating thing. When we look at air travel now, one of the things, and I know this isn't your fault, and you're there trying to run an airport, but you know, you have to wonder, and this is just my perception as someone who flies every now and then, why do people have to bring so much stuff onto the plane? Because it's a nightmare. You know, they put it in the rack, then help me put it up there. You know, it's like, I know is it because they don't want to pay the checkout fee? You're
asking the wrong guy, because you can ask anybody in my scout troop if I know how to pack light, and they will say definitely that he does not know how to pack light. No, I think because of the charge for bags, you know, the airlines are charging for checked bags. That does drive a lot of the baggage into the passenger compartment, and it's just people reacting to economic conditions. You know, a lot of our capacity that flies out of Peoria is on regional aircraft, so they don't have the larger overhead baggage compartments that the bigger airplanes do.
Right.
So a lot of times they'll gate check that. So you'll get your carry-on, and if they're full, then they'll gate check your bag. So we have these little elevators right at the door of the jet bridge, and they'll take your bag from you there, put it down to the ramp, and they'll put it in the baggage compartment of the airplane. And then you get that back at the gate when you go to the hub airport.
That to me is a lot more civilized.
It works pretty well. I think it's just people reacting to the economic conditions. If you look at it from the other side of the coin, though, what's kind of developing is a system where the airfare that you pay, because air travel is becoming commoditized, and people are getting to the point where they don't really care. Some people don't really care about the service; they want the cheapest price.
Right.
And so those are the people that we're losing to Chicago, that are going to the JetBlues and the Spirits. Typically, if you have somebody who's more interested in business travel, they want a little bit more of the amenities and be a little bit more comfortable. But if you look at it from the airline's perspective, the ancillary, they call it ancillary revenue, so it's the bag fees, anything that they charge you on top of the ticket. We're almost breaking even on the airfare to compete, and then they're making their profit on the ancillary revenues.
On the fees.
On the fees,
yeah.
Yep. So that's a critical factor. You can avoid some of it by doing carry-ons and so on. It puts you a little bit more in charge of what you're paying. But that whole system is developed, so that's really how the airlines are profitable.
Let's share this idea. We'll launch this from this podcast, so we'll take credit for it if it catches on. But I have an idea for somebody, one of the airlines or any of them. Bring nothing and buy everything where you're going.
That would stimulate the economy.
That would stimulate the economy, would help the retail sector. We know they're getting hammered, and the airline would look like a champ. You know, hey, we're trying to help you guys out. So I don't know, but just you know, I don't know if that means Amazon would take over that or not. I don't know, but no, and I won't dwell on this because you know people might have other things to think about, but. Even Southwest, which doesn't charge a bag fee, I took that last year for the first time. And Southwest, you have to know what you're doing, because I didn't realize how their seating worked. I walked onto that plane thinking I had a seat. You don't. You get whatever is left for you, and it was between Igor and Ivan at the back, and it was very uncomfortable. But the whole thing with the baggage, hey, it's free to check it. So why are these people bringing all this stuff in Southwest? They were putting it in there. So anyway, as you said, they're probably just programmed to do that. That's
probably also a control issue, because everybody's familiar with the idea of your bag getting lost, right? So they want to have their bag with them so that they can control it. But we do see, every once in a while, we'll see bags get mishandled. In other words, they put it on the wrong plane somewhere. But we don't see bags getting completely lost like you used to see. And one of the reasons is the barcode technology that they have. Every bag tag has a barcode on it, and they have these little barcode readers that are in the bag room. So every time they touch a bag, they're scanning it, and so they know where the bag went. I shouldn't say which airline, but I made a trip recently, and I ended up going to Savannah, Georgia, and we had an irregularity on the flight, and basically I made it to Savannah, my bag didn't. My bag made it about 4 hours after I did, and my bag had gone to LA and back.
Really?
So
well-traveled bag.
Yes, I had a better trip than I had, but it didn't get lost. They knew where it was the whole time, because of all the scanning. But a lot of people don't understand this, but like when you pack your check bag, don't put anything valuable in it, and don't put any medicines in it, because if it's medicines that you have to have, you need to keep those with you. And then you can get those through the TSA screening process.
Put those in the 4 or 5 bags you'll be taking onto the plane, because that's what it seems like people are doing. You were telling me before, the most popular destination out of Peoria is?
It's Las Vegas.
Which is no surprise, probably.
#1.
Yeah. And it has been probably for some time?
Yes. And it's interesting because we have the direct flight there on Allegiant, but there are more passengers that go to Las Vegas than just the ones that fly there on Allegiant. It's a hugely popular business destination. There are tons of conventions and meetings and trade shows and things like that people are going to.
I always get a kick, and I know that's true, because as you said, there's so many conventions and business meetings there. But it's funny when you talk to somebody, I just came back from Vegas, and they quickly hasten to you, don't get the idea I was gambling now. I was there for such and such, and it's like, well, I don't care why you were there. I know it's entertainment too, but it's funny how some people react to that. What can we look for in the future? Obviously, that's probably yet to be determined, but what's on your to-do list when it comes to the Peoria Airport?
Well, parking-wise, probably the first thing we're going to do is demolish that postal encoding center, and that's our.
How long has that been down? I mean, that's been a number of years, hasn't it?
That has not been occupied since I've been here.
Really?
We've always
been a while.
Yeah, we've had it on the market as space that somebody could lease, and had 1 or 2 nibbles, but we haven't even had any nibbles in probably 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
We're using the south end of that building as a storage facility for our vehicles that we use to maintain the terminal and the grounds around the terminal. So we're going to have to keep at least part of that, but we'll knock the northern 2/3 or so of that building down, and then repave that and restripe it, and we'll probably get a couple hundred parking spaces out of that.
And that's pretty good access to the terminal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty close in.
Yeah,
it's in the overflow lot, but. Don't tell anybody, but the overflow lot is a good place to park if you want a short walk.
See what you learn here on our podcast. Don't undersell the overflow lot.
That's our secret parking spot there. So
you just let the secret out, but that's all right. Well, people need to know these things. Well, it's. I don't think we need to encourage people to. I mean, we can always encourage people to check out the Peoria Airport if they haven't, but it seems like people are doing that. I mean, and I wonder. If the city of Peoria can't learn from the airport, I know it's been brought up on the council floor. I think Chuck Grab has said this. He points to the airport and says, look, what free parking has done, and I'm sure it's not just free parking, but among other things, how that's opened the door. And that's been talked about for downtown Peoria. And I know there's a cost to the meters and blah, 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 but I think that's the way to go.
Well, it has certainly helped us. You're right, it's not the only factor, because you could have free parking, but if you only have 1 or 2 flights a day,
right,
it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
We've been able to add some destinations and some service offerings. For example, our Dallas flights went from 50-seat jets. We had 3 50-seaters a day, and now it's 2 76-seaters a day. So we actually gained 2 seats. We don't have as many frequencies. We have 2 instead of 3. But it's a larger aircraft, and it has first class available.
Oh, okay.
And then we also saw that happen with Charlotte. So those kinds of things help draw passengers as well.
And they're just so we're clear. You were mentioning about the financing, how the pricing, people are going for price over everything else, and the fees have come on to kind of make up the difference. But the airline industry has been very profitable. For the last X number of years.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, they had a lot of red ink for a lot of years. They've managed to get through that, and what's really helped them is the lower fuel prices.
Okay.
If everybody's worried about what's going to happen when fuel goes back up, and we probably will see a tightening of the market, of all the markets, and when fuel goes up, you see the underperforming routes getting scaled back or eliminated.
Right.
So we're kind of crossing our fingers and hoping fuel stays reasonable for a longer period of time.
I was going to say, we don't need that $4 gas, which whatever it is on the diesel side, which is still diesel fuel, isn't it?
Well,
jet fuel, of course.
Yeah, jet fuel is chemically very similar to diesel fuel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Gene, we appreciate you coming to tell us about the airport, and wish you the best. Hope March is another record for you, because apparently you guys, all you do is break records over there. But the other thing, one more thing, the ambiance, and of course, you tell me, because you spend a lot more time out there than I do on either I'm going there to meet somebody or to take a flight myself. But the ambiance at the Peoria Airport is really kind of neat, because you go to like O'Hare. And it's like people watching, just herds of people going back and forth, and I always watch the shoe shine guy, because he eyeballs people what they're wearing on their feet. If you got sneakers, he doesn't look at you. If you got shoes, he's trying to make eye contact with you. But anyway, that's O'Hare. But Peoria's airport is kind of a different. It's people don't spend a lot of time there unless their flight is delayed, probably. I mean, it's in and out.
Right. Well, I mean, we just did a new request for proposals for the restaurant.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so we're going to be having a new restaurant operator. You probably won't notice any change for maybe 4 to 6 months, because they're going to just they want to take over and operate, make the change seamless. But if you look at where the restaurant is, it's the same restaurant on the air side and on the land side.
Right.
It's the same company, and a lot higher proportion of their income comes from the air side, because that's what people do nowadays. They want to get through the security line, and then they kind of relax. They find their gate, relax a little bit, and go find something to eat or a cup of coffee or something. That's why the gift shop is now also on the inside, on the air side, because that's where people dwell. They don't. There's no dwell time on the land side anymore. They want to get either get in or get out, and they don't spend a whole lot of time on the public side.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, Gene, we thank you for coming over here, and we'll be waiting to hear how things go and on the air front. Thanks to Matt Dayhoff, who gets this thing out on Facebook and across the social media platform, whatever that is. And I'm still learning. Anyway, this is Steve Tarter. Tarter Sauce. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Gene.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.